Supportables week 2 has come and gone, but before we jump to week 3, there's a few things we probably should discuss. Number 1, the etiquette online. I love a week of trash talk that gets both praise for being open-minded and supportive, and then immediately follows with some trash talking and some baiting and bringing up things from the past. So just a wonderful array, a roller coaster of emotions, much like week 2 itself. So before we get to our scores, let's just touch on one or two topics that we noticed in week 2 NFL. You know what they say, the only thing better than a week 1 overreaction is a week 2 overreaction. Although now our reactions can maybe be a bit more nuanced. We do have a handful of 2-0s, a handful of 0-2s, and then obviously a plethora of 1-1s. But realistically, we can start looking at players that have had peaks and valleys or ones that have just kind of stayed on some level. I think in general, probably the story has to be then that we still haven't really had a return to quarterbacking dominance yet. Another week where very underwhelming performances across the board. We had 3 300-plus yard performances, and one of them was from someone who threw 55 times for 0 touchdowns. So not exactly throwing it out of the gym here. In fact, with the all quarterbacks considered over the multiple days, 28 total touchdowns thrown. And that's about it, meaning unless I don't understand football, only 28 touchdowns caught as well. So receivers, quarterbacks, if you had one that went off, congratulations, because that was not the norm. We did have some injuries related to that with like the Cupps and the Jeffersons, although Jefferson did still put up a great day. We do have to keep our eyes on the A.J. Browns of the world that didn't even play. It might be out for a bit, or the Debos. But realistically, right now, it's the running backs game, which is kind of old school for us fantasy people who've been around for a while. There were 7 running backs who went over 100 yards, but another 6 that went over 90. And if you count the 7, plus there were 8 more that had a total combined of 100 yards if you include their receiving, which is much better and much more normal. So I'd say the one thing that kind of spurred this on for the most part in the conversation was certainly after the Thursday night game. Now, not only did it seem like both partners of pop stars did not do great, with Josh Allen underachieving this week, Tua was obviously the story, getting knocked out. Now, for most people in this watching this video have watched for a few years, so you know that Tua has a massive relationship with the concussion, so no jokes to be made here. Obviously, this one was a pretty bad one. They had the kind of, suddenly everyone's an expert on concussions and any kind of trauma when we know there's a jousting or a frozen limb. And again, no jokes on this, because if you're actually Tua's friend, you probably are calling him if he's able to take phone calls and telling him to hang it up. And a lot of announcers are taking that high road. But let's be honest, we do support or watch a league that doesn't exactly have that good of a relationship with keeping their players healthy or not assaulting people, like in the Cleveland Browns quarterback's case. So I don't think the league is going to step in. And realistically, as a group of people, I know sometimes we can take the high ground, and some people deserve to, but there are also those who watch a lot of those combat sports, the people in cages and rings. And I'm not talking about the 80s style, the old wrestling where people dressed up in undies, greased up, pretending to fight fake foreign people. Not that wrestling. Mixed martial arts, boxing. We know that concussions is a massive part of that game, and you are getting punched and kicked in the head for a living. So we do support sports, and the royal we. So I know it's a hard conversation to have, but ultimately it just takes you out of it, and unfortunately we kind of do this to have fun, and watching someone and just hoping they don't get knocked out is certainly not fun. So I think we all are kind of hoping for one result here, and sorry to the Tua owners, but if I were you, I'd probably want to start shopping, not just because he might not come back, but probably maybe because he shouldn't. But I think this kind of leads me to think a bigger question that I was wondering even since last year. If you watched any of these videos late into last year, I mentioned this a couple times, but last year there was the most number of started quarterbacks because of so many injuries or replacement players. I mean, we know Burrow had a history, and if you were watching the Kansas City-Cincinnati game, there is a thought that maybe he's still actually more injured. Look up water bottle gate and the way he chose to drink a water bottle for evidence there. Richardson went out early last year. Obviously, Rodgers and Cousins with Achilles that are kind of made of dry spaghetti. There's a few people who are kind of on the watch. Even Love going down early this year. We know that Cleveland made a run by resurrecting a career of someone who we all thought was kind of over and done with. Even now, and this is kind of my point, Miami suffers obviously a tragic incident. They have a backup quarterback, but they don't really like him. So they're already shopping a market. They're trying to get some old quarterbacks to come in. So my thought is, if you've noticed anything about the Phillies, the Eagles a few years back, having a good backup quarterback can actually help and save you in a little bit. I don't know why you don't pay one. I guess they're just trying to minimize, and so you can get these guys on rental contracts. But wouldn't it be great if your quarterback got knocked out? That's not great. But you had someone to step in. I mean, not everyone can have Pittsburgh situation where another team is paying for your backup quarterback to be there. But maybe spend a little bit of money on someone who actually knows the system. So when and if the guy goes down or needs a break, your person coming in is not just completely inept. And of course, I say this as in one of my leagues, I do have Tyreek Hill. Obviously, it wasn't all doom and gloom. We had some people step up and have some massive weeks. If you are a Marvin Harrison Jr. fan, you had a phenomenal first half, or pretty much anyone in that Arizona offense. But before I get to the ifs, the buts, and the what happens, because we do know there's also a running back that his name starts with A and rhymes with Malvin Kamara. They were shifting the league. They were making sure that people got wins, even if your week wasn't great. But to get to all of that stuff, let's get to our league-specific scores and how we all fared in week 2. In the matchup that was supposed to be one of the highest scoring ones in terms of Yahoo predicted, it did perform. And actually, this was our top score of the week in Jake and Paul, and our 5th highest scorer in Hale and Vincent. So unfortunate for them, because whenever you're in the top 4 or 5, you know there's a bunch of teams you would have beaten, but it is the nature of the beast. So how did it kind of go down? Starting with your top there, Hurts was our quarterback 3 for the week. I think the biggest thing, though, if we have to make just some blanket statements, if you look at your running backs, all of them overperforming. No one going off, although Hall was our running back 5, so well done there. The other 2, though, giving you more than enough points to make up for Pitt's underperformance, but we're going to see that a lot with tight ends in general this week. Again, another week where they didn't really step up. Your wide receivers, great, not one on the top 5, but they certainly were in that range, and definitely leaning on the Chargers 2-0, right? So having both their kicker, who's off to a great start, and their defense, which was our defense 5, and actually the 3rd highest that we started. Your bench, not too bad, but nothing really that's going to point out. Sure, you could have made a few changes, but to be honest with you, I think they would have been downgrades. So you did the best you could. Now, in terms of our 0-2, 4th and not yet to conquer, you didn't have a bad week. And obviously, like I said, you would have beaten at least half the team. So unlucky with your matchup. Also unlucky with some of your injury issues. Now, Lamb is someone that, as of now, I haven't been too concerned with. They did say there's something of concern that we have to pay attention to, but he looks like he might be a go for week 3, whereas Pacheco, he's out. He's on the IR, so he's out for at least a couple weeks, and we're not really sure afterwards. And they were, during the game, they became a bit of an issue, even if one was a little bit later. Cook was probably your stud of the week. He was our running back 2, and in most weeks might have been the running back 1, but we'll get to the guy who was definitely the running back 1, and you made all the right moves on the bench. So unfortunately for you, just bumped up against a hot team who's now in our top 4 with a 1-1 spot. So well done, Jake and Paul, to bounce back from last week's tough loss. Keep scoring 136, 4th and conquer, and don't worry, you'll get your first win soon. By about 4 or 5 points, I was the 2nd highest scoring team, just down from our number 1. And actually, our number 3 was just below me. I didn't beat them by a whole lot. And if you look at my top 2, you might wonder how. I didn't have a great performance by Richardson like I did in week 1. And Wilson really hasn't developed a great rapport with Rodgers yet. It's kind of been underwhelming. He's doing okay, but not as good as he should. I don't know. Maybe he didn't buy into 9/11 being an inside job and Rodgers won't throw him the ball. I'm not sure. But what saved me was definitely my running backs. All 3 did fine, but 2 of my 3 are on the top 5 list. They were number 3 and number 4 collectively, so yay me. And I did have the number 5 quarterback in Geno Smith. So that was enough to kind of push me through and go up for some, or make up for some of my shortcomings in terms of some of my players who didn't really step up. I also could have made a better decision both in wide receiver and defense, but I took the win. In terms of Pamela, super unlucky, and there was definitely times when I thought I was donezo, like for instance the first half of the Arizona game when Harrison was going off. But if you didn't watch it, you don't even know how great it actually was. The 132 touchdowns happened pretty early and on pretty spectacular catches. Even some of the ones after that were great. So I think he definitely made up for his week 1 kind of fart there. DK Metcalf as well. So Harrison and DK were wide receiver 1 and 2. In some weeks, that would have definitely been enough, Pamela. I'm sorry. And even 130, you were definitely over exceeding your predicted. Now, Ingram, if you were wondering why he was predicted for 0, that was a late scratch. That was during warmups. I believe he hurt himself. So huge point for me there. And then having Miami just get trounced by Buffalo. Most people were not happy about that, including anyone who had Tyreek Hill, which we'll get to later. But I wasn't so bummed. You did have randomly, Daniel Jones going off. That might be his performance of the year, unless he can keep doing it. He would have helped you out, but not enough. It was a 20-point win, so yay for me. And Pamela, same comment. If you keep scoring 130, you're not going to be over for much longer. I mentioned that I just took Juliet and Lara by about 1.5 points, but overall we see our current leader 2-0 and definitely got by ball too well. So Randy was putting up a fight for most of the week and then just kind of fell off at one point. I'll just do Randy quickly here, but you did have the quarterback one. Congratulations. You actually unfortunately chose the wrong B. Robinson. Bijan did fine, but your other one did slightly better. And I think your other probably highlight, I love that Rice is going off. He wasn't in our top 5, but kicker, Houston's kicker was our kicker too, and the best kicker that was actually started. So I think Dallas's defense kind of sunk you, and then obviously you weren't getting a lot from your injured crew and Cup, and just Ford not doing what he did in week 1. Now, to our leaders, your big concern is Mixon was huge for you in week 1, and he obviously got hurt here. Now, we're not sure how bad that injury is going to be, so that's something you got to pay attention to. However, you actually are one of the few people who had a good tight end. Kittle was our tight end 1. Buffalo, our defense 1. So you get 2 kind of off positions like that where other people weren't doing well, and you have the best scoring. That's a lot of plus minus there, so well done for you. We can also point to randomly Adams and the Vegas offense that woke up. Kind of shocking, but great for you because I think, your other receivers just kind of performing where they did was more than enough. Connor's been a great addition, and Goff should have been better for throwing 55 times, so that's a little bit concerning. Either way, you do not have concerns. Randy's going to have to bounce back because she is one of the 1-1 people we will talk about later, stuck in the middle, vying for playoff spots, even though it's a bit early to start rooting for that. But Malakov's at midnight. You are currently in our top spot, so congratulations. Raph and James, I would say you are quietly and consistently just pushing forward, but there is nothing quiet about your performance. We tend to hear it a lot on the chat group, so keep that fire up. In terms of your success, a lot has to do with your wide receivers. You had the wide receivers 3 and 5 in Neighbors and Nico, respectively, and even London overperforming and actually getting that late touchdown in the Monday Nighter. That didn't hurt your cause. Now, it was not a super close matchup, so you probably weren't really sleeping on that one on Monday and worrying too much. I think you kind of already had it in the bag, but it's always nice to see your wide receivers wake up just a little bit, especially when your quarterback's kind of underperformed, which is surprising with 2 studs. You also made a great waiver wire pickup with the coveted Likely. However, unlikely for you, he did not have a great game, so let's see how that pans out with Andrews. Our returning champions are in our 10th spot, which has got to sting a little bit, although if you listen to the comments, they're not super worried. Now, Cousins did have a great Monday night game, but having the balance out, it's always great when you have a lead and the other person's quarterback you have a receiver for, so unfortunately you didn't get the big kick there. Jefferson, obviously your top guy and probably will be most weeks. He did leave with a bit of a tweak, so it's worth paying attention to. Everyone else, you're kind of steady here. You're really just kind of missing your big guns. Kansas City not stepping up for you. Stepping up for on defense, but not on offense. Kelsey not living up to his hype right now, so let's see how that rolls. You could say the same with White, whereas everyone else at least was doing what they should. You've just got these 3 in the middle here, throwing Cooper, and that kind of sunk your ship. In terms of your bench, I'd say Carr. That's massive if he can keep going. How much do we trust New Orleans offense? I guess we're about to see, so I don't know if they make your way into your week 3 lineup or not. But you're already 2-0, you're already 10th, so why not shake things up? Raph, James, you're top 3, you're undefeated. Good luck in week 4, or week 3. Apologies. Coming into this week, we had 2 1-0s, 2 wins last week, big showdown, and actually it ended up being who could not disappoint more. And actually, I know that sounds bad considering Kelsey's only a couple off were predicted, but we're going to see that most of her people did not do well. She was definitely the definition of a 1-horse pony. Kamara had one of a Kamara-like weeks. A lot of you have not been in fantasy enough to know when Kamara effectively decided a lot of championships a couple weeks ago with a massive touchdown performance. He was back at it, 3 touchdowns, over 100 yards rushing, over 60 yards receiving. That's a killer. Definitely our wide receiver or our running back one. You obviously did have a kicker. He was our 5th kicker overall, and Pittsburgh's defense was our 4th. But let's be honest, if it wasn't for Kamara, Jackie might have actually squeaked this out. And actually, if you look at her bench with a receiver combo action, she could have still made a fight. One of the biggest things, Jax, that killed you in a lot of ways. Obviously, Tyreek Hill not having a game, Tua being out, that could be troublesome. But the Rams just getting steamrolled by Arizona. You would have thought Stafford and Williams would have put up a little bit more of a fight. They both got pulled at some point in the 4th, and you just lost all chances. That was a dagger. So not only do you suffer your first loss of the year after being our top scorer after week 1, but looks like you're buying your first round of drinks. Sorry, Jax. The scores we saw for week 2 before we pop to week 3, just a quick look at the standings. I know it's way too early, but I always think it's kind of even with their or nice when it's symmetry like this. We got 3 who haven't lost, 3 who haven't won, and the rest of us fighting for point differential. Way too early to start worrying about things. I just want to mention something that I'm going to say now and probably 5 to 12 more times over the next few weeks. Remember, one of the changes we made this year with adding the 2 new players is top 6 will make the playoffs, top 2 get the bye. So I'm telling you now so that maybe by the end of the year, Raph and James hear me. Last time it took a little while to understand the concept of playoffs, so just getting it in early, so hopefully it sinks in. Jumping to week 3, we obviously are going to, right now the scores are probably, or the predicted scores might be not something we have to worry too much about. Now, I'm doing this just before the Thursday nighter. Hopefully I get it out in enough time. Some people have already made their waiver wire moves. Some have done that thing where they're adding and dropping like crazy. So I don't know how much these will change, but I would assume a little bit over the next couple of days. Already, we see a pretty interesting 1-point differential in our 6 versus 8 matchup. I think probably the matchup of the week, we got to look at our 1 and our 3 going after it. Right now looks like a slight edge for Jules and Lara, but let's see what Raph and James can come up with. The only one that doesn't look super close yet, I know Randy though has a very active bench, and I would be shocked if her predicted stay around that level for too much longer. I think the same could be said for Pamela and Team Kickass. I would expect some decisions to be made between now and Sunday afternoon. So now that we know the matchups, now we know what we're set for, let's just get ready for week 3. Sounds like now that we're done, 2 weeks gone, 2 drinks to buy. Sounds like people like Pamela and Jackie are getting together, doing that smart thing to make it worth your while. We get maybe more people coming out, and you get more than one beverage to do it. Thanks for those who are shouting out to me, kind of wishing me a nice long distance beer, so maybe I will take a picture of me and a Chang here in Bangkok and send it along. So hopefully y'all can get together for weeks 1 and 2 to celebrate, but even more importantly, hopefully you're paying attention. Tonight is not maybe the most exciting Thursday night game in the world, at least in terms of potential matchup. Some people though do have the Jets or the Patriots, so make sure those are set in your roster. But lots of injuries, lots of last minute decisions heading into Sunday, so let's pay attention to them. And as always, best of luck in week 3, crew.